Hi students, and I welcome you to this chapter which is based on lines and angles. These two together constitute many of the geometrical figures that you have studied or you will study in your higher classes. It forms the very foundation of geometry. In this chapter, we will study about the properties of angles formed when two lines intersect each other, and also the properties of the angles formed when a line intersects two or more parallel lines. Further, we are going to use these properties to prove some of the very important results using deductive reasoning. So let's try to study this chapter from the very basics and enjoy all the properties related with lines and angles. First of all, why do we have to study about lines and angles? Why is this chapter called the foundation of geometry? To answer this question, we are going to see some of the very important applications of lines and angles in our day-to-day lives. And through that, we are going to understand how important or how crucial this chapter is to geometry. The first application is an architect's design. Look at this complex figure. It consists of various lines. These lines are slanted, these lines are parallel, these lines are intersecting, and so on. An architect is a person who designs the structures of buildings, offices, school, colleges, and so on. And he uses the concepts of lines and angles. These are some of the lines and these are some of the angles. So even in this kind of a structure, we see there are so many lines and so many angles formed. So do you think without the knowledge of lines and angles, will he be able to design the structure of any building? No. For that, he needs the knowledge of parallel lines, intersecting lines, different angles, properties of angles, and so he uses the concepts of lines and angles. Now what are ray diagrams? Ray diagrams are the tools that are used in the study of optics. For example, if we consider a concave mirror, then we know that any line parallel to the axis passes through the focus, any line through the center of curvature passes through it again, and any line from the focus becomes parallel after reflection. So all these lines or all these rays help us to find out the exact image of any object with respect to any mirror. Ray diagrams are also used for concave or convex lenses. So again, in the study of optics, we need the help of lines and angles. Now you must have heard of refraction. Now what do we mean by refraction? Refraction is a phenomenon by the virtue of which light ray bends towards the normal or away from the normal when it passes from one medium to the other. For example, let us say that this is air and this is water. Now let us say this is the normal, and a ray of light which is incident becomes refracted after passing from air to water, and it is towards the normal. Now this light is known as the incident ray and this is known as the refracted ray. This is the angle of incidence and this is the angle of refraction. So again, what we are doing? We are using the concept of lines and angles. So studying refraction again involves the application of lines and angles. What is angle of elevation? Let us say that this is the Statue of Liberty and there are some tourists watching the Statue of Liberty. Now this is a horizontal ray, that is, it is a ray that originates from the eye of the observer and is parallel to the ground. Similarly, this is called as the line of sight. This is the point under observation, so a line joining the eye and the point of observation is the line of sight. Now this angle is known as angle of elevation. But now why is angle of elevation used? Angle of elevation helps us to exactly find out the length or the height of any object. Again, we see that there are two lines or two rays and there's an angle between them. All these three helps us to find out the height of any object. Again, angles and lines are used to find out the height. So even in trigonometry, lines and angles play a very important role. Again, what are clinometers? They are the tools that are used to measure the angles of elevation. We have just seen how angle of elevation is important to find out the height of any object. So clinometers are the tools that help us to calculate the angle of elevation. And again, what we can say is they use the properties of lines and angles. Free body diagram. Let us say that there's a drum and this drum is being pushed by Batman, Superman and the Hulk, but in different directions. Now these superheroes are applying force on the drum, but can you actually represent it in a free body diagram? Yes, this drum is represented by this object and the various forces that are being applied are represented this way. So a free body diagram simplifies a physical situation, and thus it helps us to find out the resultant of all the forces that are being applied at an object. Again, all these are lines and they are being applied at some angles. So again, the free body diagrams involve the application of lines and angles. We use the properties of lines and angles so much in our day-to-day lives that we don't even notice whether we are using it or not. So all these applications that we have studied and many more such applications involve the use of lines and angles. And thus this is the reason why we need to study lines and angles. This is the reason why we need to study the properties that are related to lines and angles. So throughout this chapter we are going to introduce ourselves to some very new concepts and very new theorems and see some of the very interesting properties of lines and angles.